because the Apple Watch says it's not gonna work. Call to order, meeting of the planning commission, May 1, 2023. Public comment? Hearing none. Move forward, 850 North Clemson Boulevard, land development plan. Jim, you wanna, Michelle, you guys wanna say anything before I say something I shouldn't say?
Well, I think Mike's here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Mike Leffler owns El July, and they own, well, they're different entities,
Yeah,
but they own the building.
So you actually, as a planning commission, would have gotten 2 review letters on this. The first was from April 10th, and then after that, Brad Giraldi, I believe engineer for the project, was able to go through the April 10th letter, clean the plans up, resubmit, and McCarthy's office was able to issue a new review letter dated April 27th. Unless the PC has any questions, which, just to kind of refresh your memory, because it's been a while since we talked about this project. This is for a roughly 1,600 square foot addition off the back of the building. So based off of that, I would say McCarthy's most recent review letter is even more cleaned up.
Yeah, the only thing that, really all they have to do, from our standpoint, is provide the necessary, sign the plan, certificate of ownership, and then provide any, escrow agreement and, post the escrow.
I just have one question, and I didn't look at the plan closely enough, I probably could have answered myself. Have these lots been merged, is it all one lot, or are these still separate parcels?
Did you change them into, did you do it in consolidation?
No. As far as I know, they're separate properties.
Alright, I don't know if you've thought about that, I mean, typically, when we're straddling the property line, I'd like to see a deed recorded to combine lots, but I don't know if there's any extenuating.
Is there no,
circumstances.
because that was a prior comment.
That was a prior
I
comment.
just don't have the letter, all that, it's been a while, how that was resolved.
Hold on, let me get really close.
It says former track one.
But we can certainly make that condition, it's not. I think I got resolved before, in the April 10th letter. I don't know from that, all you know, how that was resolved.
I don't see a plan note, at least not an obvious one.
Why, I don't know if it's outstanding or not, but it's something that should be confirmed at least. And if it's not already combined, I would recommend a condition that they be combined.
I think we were able to confirm it's not been done, so.
You know, we can, I'm fine with doing that.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see a note, but I know there was a lot of different review letters, so it might have been on something. And it does say, on that plan down the middle, it says former track line, so maybe it wasn't a comment, and we agreed to do it. I just don't see it.
Anybody willing to make a motion for conditional plan approval, subject to an annexation deed being recorded to combine the 2 lots into one?
And the remaining comments in the very short review.
I'll make that motion. Second.
Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I told
You have all that, Melissa?
Brad,
Yeah.
he was really about most of the I was
Okay.
like, councilman's here for this
That's
first.
21 Van Reed Road.
Okay.
Yes,
Is he,
I hold on one second,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I wanted to give you some backstory on this before we actually get into the land development plan, which would be the conditional use hearing that took place back in February to allow the use. Can you just give me 15 seconds of sidebar with Mr. Leffler to finish? So, council will approve it next week and then
Okay.
get the plan for signature.
Okay,
Okay,
so I'm good. Thanks, everyone.
sorry about that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So this project is being developed under the redevelopment area mixed use incentive overlay district area 2, which allows apartment use by right when it is above a commercial use. In this case, the applicant developer came in to request approval, I'm sorry, I'm wrong, it was for the building height and, I'm losing
This
my
we
mind
didn't
here.
have to do. Bob.
Sorry, I'm talking, been talking to too many developers about the RAMU overlay. This was for building height and what was the?
Purpose coverage.
Thank you.
Yes.
And paved coverage on the lot. So that is a separate conditional use hearing that is held before Borough Council. That hearing took place back on February 22nd. The handout I gave everyone seated at the table prior to the meeting starting is the conditions council put on the conditional use approval being granted. I wanted you all to understand that because it ties back to several of the review comments in McCarthy's letter. And I know there was some general concern to make sure those conditions were communicated to the planning commission as a whole, since this body is the next step in the approval process for the plan moving forward. So if you don't mind just taking a couple of minutes to read through that if you've not already done so. If anybody has questions specific as to what if any of those conditions mean or what they are, feel free to speak up. Big file. And there aren't any questions, we can, I'll turn it over to Rob to start discussing the project.
Okay, so what we have here is a proposed apartment building on the property which is located sandwiched between Van Reed and Greenwich Streets. The, apologies here, I believe it's a 6-story building with a total of 210 units. We'll have 2 access points off of Van Reed Road and 1 access point off of Greenwich. If you can see by the land here, primarily the access on the left side or the west side of the property will have a straight through access from Van Reed down to Greenwich Street. There'll be a loop drive that goes around on the north side of the building, which connects to the other access point to Van Reed. We'll have parking provided on the south side of the building along parallel to Van Reed, and there'll be remote parking provided on the east side over there in the remote lot. Also, underneath the building itself, there's going to be 2 levels of parking provided there to maximize the amount of parking that's being provided for these proposed apartments with the limited spaces available on this property. We have several review comments from the township engineer and the traffic consultant. Not sure how you guys want to dig into that first, if you want me to just roll through and point out questions, or do you have any specific concerns anybody wants to mention before we get into it?
Jim, can you highlight the major concerns on it? I think that's probably the easiest way to do it.
Well, do you want to start with taking traffic concerns? Let's let Greg start. Let's get the traffic issues out, because I know that's probably, I know that was the main concern of the residents on Greenwich. Well, one of their main concerns. Headlights were another, buffering, those types of things.
Right, so, again, Greg Richardson with Traffic Planning and Zoning. We reviewed the plans that were submitted, as well as the traffic study that was completed. The traffic study was a very comprehensive study. It looked at a number of intersections around the site, as well as a few off-site that could potentially be impacted by the increase in traffic. The review that I did was I broke it up into basically two areas, which was the plan review and the traffic study itself. The plan review, I think I had more comments on that as far as the traffic study. The site is gonna generate around 81 to 82 trips during the peak hours, and that's gonna be spread out over 3 intersections and on 2 different roadways, as you can see. That is traffic in and out of the site, so while it may seem like a substantial number, when you spread it out over the roadways and the intersections, the driveways, it won't have the greatest impact. If it was all coming out of one driveway, certainly it would have greater impact. But the advantage of this site is at least it has 3 access points and spreads the traffic out a little bit. So there really wasn't, if you look at the traffic impact at the intersection, there wasn't a real increase in delay and a decrease in levels of service. Again, the intersections worked primarily at the same levels of service with and without the site. So therefore, we didn't see that there was any real major comments to make regarding the traffic study. But they did provide that, so if the neighbors still have some concerns about the site, they can certainly refer to the study, and look at it at their leisure, I guess, township makes it, or borough makes it, available. So what we wanted to do was focus on the driveways as well as the internal circulation. I think with sites like this and the way the borough is promoting pedestrian-friendly developments in this area, we took a hard look at the pedestrian connections to the site. Certainly with today's demographics, people are starting to walk more, they're starting to ride their bikes, they're taking ride share a little bit more than they used to, and so we made a number of comments, and if you want to go through each one of them, I can go through them real quick. If we can pull up the plan, maybe, and I can go through. Does everyone have a copy of the review letter?
Yeah.
Okay. So some of the comments, and I'll just point them out real quick, is the first comment was to provide a connection from the building, it's probably better over here, from the building itself to Van Reed. There is, I know there's a retaining wall here, so that would probably have to be in this area here or somewhere down in here. There is really no connection between the building and the sidewalk that's proposed along Van Reed, and I felt it was wise to provide that connection. Otherwise, they're gonna be walking in the driveway, which I don't think is a wise. We made a comment about providing ADA compliant ramps at the key locations where there's crossings or sidewalk crossings across the driveway or any internal locations. The area adjacent to the building, and this is something that I always make a comment on, is that you provide sidewalk right next to parking, pull-in parking. You eventually, essentially you lose your effective width of that sidewalk. So if you've got a 4 or 5 foot sidewalk proposed there, without wheel stops, you overhang the car is going to take about 1.5 to 2 feet. So I felt it was worth making a comment that maybe they could provide either wheel stops or provide a wider sidewalk. And again, this is all at the borough's discretion. I mean, I'm making recommendations that, there's also
An issue with either of those?
The access points providing sidewalk out to Greenwich and to Van Reed makes sense, so we don't have any issues with that. The only issue we might take is with the wheel stops is snow removal in the front of the building. It kind of makes it difficult if you put those wheel stops in there. But it's something we can take under consideration and discuss it with the applicant.
Could you widen the sidewalk like Craig guys said, 1.5 or so? Is that what you're looking for?
well, I said 7, but I think we can probably go down to 4. I mean, to 6, if that helps. Because then you still would have
So it's at 4 now. Yeah, there's room there to put 2 more feet in.
Yeah, if you could get that in, I
Or we
think.
could punch it back 2 foot and just put,
The stops, because when I plow, I don't get.
yeah, I know, so.
Another option is to provide what they call a verge, the green area.
Right, so.
So if you wanna do that, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
So we could put, you know, river rock or grass or something like separate the sidewalk if you don't want
Grass or river rock or some type of decorative.
And
something
then-
else in that 2 foot from the back of the curb to the edge of the sidewalk, you just push the whole sidewalk.
Right, and then you can say 4 foot shoulder, 4 foot sidewalk, you don't have to widen it that.
Okay.
Okay, alright, good. We recommended some kind of crossing in this area here, because there is really, if you wanted to cross for the parking lot, I'm not sure what's in this area here, is proposed, I don't know what the grading is, maybe you guys could explain, but there is a crossing here, but I felt there might be a good opportunity to put another crossing here. And that way, there is some internal sidewalk here that might provide some access.
So the grading is, the parking lot on the east side is lower than the driveway, plus there's no pedestrian access to to the east side of the building. There's a walkway that goes around, a sidewalk that goes around the building, but there would have to be steps going up from the parking lot,
Okay,
to the driveway,
Yeah, it
and
was-
then across that driveway.
yeah, I wasn't sure about the grading, so,
Yeah.
it's just a recommendation that, if somebody wants to walk, they're gonna have to walk up to here in the parking lot. Up to this by themselves.
I'm sorry, were there architectural plans with this submission?
With this, no. That's part of the conditional
That's one
use
of
hearing.
The conditional use hearing.
Okay, because I'd be curious to see where the entrances are in relationship to the parking, because you said there's none on the east side.
Yeah, so,
Do you want to show if I pull those up?
Sure.
now we have, yeah, if you have the old ones, but, I can point it out on the site plan too, when you get done look at those. So this is the front of the building on Van Reed. Essentially, you can't really see it, but there's like right in the front, in the middle of the building, on the front of the building is gonna be the main entrance.
Okay.
Down on this east side here, there's no, pedestrian access. There will be right, if we go back to the site plan, so let's say underneath this brown, darker brown section here, there's gonna be a vehicular access to the upper parking level that's underneath the building, but there's no place for, pedestrians to go inside the building on that east side.
So it's down to the south side.
Will there be a door or, closing that and residents like press a button and the gate door goes up? Or is it
we
open to the,
We were gonna keep it
elements?
open, yeah, we were
Yeah.
doing at least one space for every apartment.
right,
So the,
but couldn't a resident walk from the parking lot into that area?
I guess,
technically, they
yeah.
could walk in the driveway in that
Yeah.
area, yes.
Would they have any need? I mean, I certainly,
There's an elevator in there and
Yeah.
go
If they want a shortcut walk, either they could walk around to the front of the building, the rear of the back, so the north side of the building has 2 stair towers also. So if they wanna go to the elevator inside the building, it would be shorter, probably be a slightly shorter to walk across, along the side of the east side of the building, in through the parking lot to the elevator, but, yeah.
okay,
No, we're not doing
Michelle, can we go back to the site plan? All right, so if that's the case,
Would it help if I pulled up a sheet that actually
that. It's just the
had
token.
building on it?
if that's the case, and you can't cross here, would it make sense to put a sidewalk up to this point?
Well, we have a sidewalk adjacent to the building.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to do is get a point where they can cross.
Right.
If you can't cross
Channelize in
here,
one location.
if you're gonna, if
So
you,
so you're suggesting like along if somewhere in between the driveway and the bank of parking spaces to provide another
yeah,
pedestrian
right,
walkway
right
there?
up here, maybe, a sidewalk here, maybe?
And then, well, they cross when they go on the north side of the building, can they get in?
There's stair towers on the
They're
north
gonna
side of
come
the
in the
building.
driveway.
So,
That's,
How's the visitor get in?
well, the visitor,
They're parking in the front.
yeah, they're gonna have to
Yeah.
park in the front.
What happens when the 12 visitor spaces out front are full with 210 apartments?
They have to walk along the sidewalk.
they'd have to walk along the sidewalk around to the front of
The
the
side
building.
of the building,
Over
or
here?
sidewalk,
Yeah.
yeah.
So how are they,
But we have to get them to that, you have to get them to that sidewalk.
Well, they'd have to they could walk through the auxiliary parking lot to the north end where the crosswalk is, go across to the building and then walk back to the south.
I would rather have the sidewalk along the drive than right up against the building, along that area you just mentioned.
right here,
Yeah,
Well,
yes.
there's a retaining wall
And then
along the
on the
driveway.
other side,
and then
right here, yeah.
there's a sidewalk there also.
Yeah. I'm thinking you can put the sidewalk along the,
Why wouldn't you get everyone to the southern end of that parking lot and come up a flight of stairs, cause your handicap parking's out front?
We can do that, change it,
So-
we can put the steps right.
Cause I mean, that seems,
Yeah, if you do the
that seems
crossing
like
here,
you're gonna walk,
Instead of in the back.
you're gonna walk 750, 800 feet from that far parking space down,
Back up.
along the building, up the hill, across the front of the, what if it was like the rain the last couple days?
Yeah,
Here you go.
You're not gonna like coming back from, the supermarket that day.
Well, primarily, we had that conversation about groceries and bringing in stuff, and that's why we were looking at assigning one space for each tenant, either under the building or in the front, so they'd have easier access to the building. Primarily, we were looking at grades, and the grades at the north end of that, of the eastern parking lot are softer, because then you don't have to go past the retaining wall along the edge of the building. We could work into another set of steps.
to eliminate the back one, just do one.
yeah, so as long as you can make it ADA, you don't wanna have to do it, but I'm just saying, as long as it doesn't create, I'm just saying, as long as it doesn't create any ADA.
You don't need ADA for that, cause you have your ADA parking out front.
Right.
And I'm sure internally, you're gonna have to have X number of those internal garage spaces ADA. I think that's what, 3% per floor, minimum of 2 per floor, or 6 per floor inside? I know we looked at that before with the parking
Five,
count.
we're just over 100, so it's 5.
So your ADA, so this is an accessory lot that's really too
Right.
far away to even be governed by ADA, but,
Okay, all right, well, just,
so, but I think we wanna make sure, I don't think we want, I just think that's bad design and plan, you make somebody, that was one of our big comments, but I knew you had that anyway, I'll let you go first and have it. Was that big walk,
Yeah, we can do steps in there. and make
for
some-
Florida, it's probably okay,
We're not.
but we're not.
Just to be sure.
Those tornadoes.
and you wouldn't need steps in Florida anyway.
Right, it's too flat.
Yes, exactly.
so, going back to the comment, we're looking at
Yeah.
a crossing here with some stairs, strategic
Somewhere,
location.
or somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere in here.
Or even up.
And then a tie into the
Even further
sidewalk
south.
right here.
Even further south. Get them down into that little odd angle parking area.
That gets up into the,
Well, I think
That's
the
the tallest
best
part of
place
the
is
wall
right
there.
here, but I don't know where you would put the steps.
yeah, unfortunately, that's the tallest part of the wall
Yeah.
there at the end of that, those
Okay.
parking spaces.
Well, I think that's, you just have to put your engineering hat on.
Well, through the elevator outside.
Right.
He knows some stone guys.
Yeah.
They'll build those steps.
All right, and then the final comment of this section was the plan review, was I felt it was wise to provide a sidewalk in this area here, near Greenwich, and then provide a crossing here, because you have sidewalk here, and then this will provide a neighborhood connection. Much like we were asking something to tie in on Van Reed, I think it's a good idea to tie in Greenwich, because there is sidewalk here, you just put a sidewalk here, down here.
Well, there'll be sidewalk on the whole front of both streets. So,
Well, I don't, is there a sidewalk here?
Top of Greenwich.
I
well,
don't see
the
it.
ordinance requires it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
did you make that down?
Yeah.
Okay,
Originally, when we brought this in, we were looking at doing just the sidewalk along Van Reed, so that's kind of what we had proposed here. The existing sidewalk on Greenwich Street, like, as Greg had mentioned, we can provide a connection to that from the site. I guess the question is there really a need for additional sidewalk along the entire frontage of Greenwich when,
I mean, that would be something the planning commission would have to recommend the waiver of, the council would have to grant if we don't want the sidewalk, if they feel the sidewalk's not applicable in this case.
You know my feelings on sidewalk.
You know my feelings on sidewalk.
Right, yes.
Is it actually doable though, the grades, to do a sidewalk along there without disturbing the existing trees?
Hold on, go to that landscaping plan.
that's part of the other concern that we got when we came in for the conditional use with the neighbors, was that they wanted to see a lot of natural vegetation and screening provided in that area to sort of break up the,
Yeah, but that's all behind the property line. Your public sidewalk is gonna go in the right of way.
area. It's just, it's.
So those are the street trees. So those are the street trees.
it looks like that those existing street trees would most likely all have to get taken out.
I'd say Jim should go out and look at that with Mark before, and actually give us an assessment, more of that too.
Have Jim and Mark meet me in my back parking lot tomorrow and walk over there and look at it with the two of them. I believe those trees are up in what will be the 4-foot grass plot, the roots, but there might have to be some root structure ground out for the sidewalk, which typically our parks guys, Mark does that, 'cause they have the contractor open up and they come in and grind the roots the way they want, and then put the sidewalk on top.
I would say stay tuned on that one, cause I think that's something our tree department and public works director should look at and make a recommendation on.
So I'll set up a meeting with Mark and Jim Babb to go out and look at that. Tree Mark. I don't even know what's Tree Mark's last name.
McLaughlin,
McLaughlin.
tree mark,
Is that his first name?
no, his first name's Mark.
That's a good name for a tree guy. Okay, all right.
Any particular plan sheet you wanna, cause I just.
You could have if you go back to the one you had before.
Site plan.
Might take a while, kinda blurred.
That'll work. Is that the same?
That's their council,
Just
so
have the turning
he wants
radius.
the turning time with them. Yeah, get 2 more back, I think.
Yeah, that'll work. Okay. The next comment is under parking lot and driveways specifically. I wanted to focus on it. First comment I had was these 2 drive aisles have dead ends. My concern with this always is that someone comes down and can't find a parking spot, and they have to back out or make some kind of rooster turn or something like that. My recommendation would be to somehow tie the 2 together, but again, it's got, you have to work it out with grading. I don't know if it works for you grading wise, or if you lose spaces that, I'm not sure where you stand on your parking requirements.
So technically, we have extra spaces from the requirements, but I think when we looked at this, there was a big concern about possibly overflow parking and people parking along Greenwich Street and taking up spaces, that the residents are using down there. So, we were, looking to maximize as many parking spaces on the property as possible. I know we do have extras, but again, technically that was based on the 1.2 spaces per unit, because we're providing some parking underground, under the apartment building. But, I think realistically, we wanna make sure that we provide enough parking spaces on the property. To me, there's a lot of parking lots that that have dead ends, and, I think that having the additional parking spaces outweighs the inconvenience of someone having to back out through the lot. That's just my opinion. Obviously, the planning commission, has to weigh in.
What is the grade difference between those rows?
So the rows are pretty they're adjacent grades, so they touch, so they're pretty flat across there relatively. I mean, they're like 5% across there. You have about a 10-foot drop from the access driveway down to that parking lot. So, right in there, yeah, that's where one of the highest, points of the retaining wall is. So again, we looked at maximizing the most number of parking spaces we could provide to avoid any possible issues that parking for the tenants may have on the surrounding neighborhood and streets.
There's 2 spaces if
What's the total parking spaces that you're gonna be providing versus the requirement?
Apologies. So I believe.
Yeah, it is, but this plan is like
here we go. So 318 is what we're providing, and
Maybe one
two
and a
hundred
half
fifty-two is what's required. But again, that's at 1.2 spaces per unit. So we were looking at more like trying to provide 1.5 spaces per unit, which we felt was more in line with what might actually be the use.
So just to make sure I understand the lot that's further to the right on the plan, if you park in those bottom spaces, like the very ones towards the bottom of the plan in that row, without, I mean, I know we mentioned about the stairwell or the crosswalks before, but as it stands at the moment, without those, you would have to walk all the way up to Greenwich, to the crosswalk rather, and then into the building that way. So basically, you'd almost have a shorter walk, street parking there, than you would in the back half of those two lots to get into the building. If you don't have something that goes up and across there through the internal route.
Yeah, if they don't put those stairs that we recommended up at this southern end, like in that
Yeah.
area, to put the stairs to get them up on that access road and then to the front door. Yeah, that would be,
And is there frontage parking on Van Reed at all?
there is no parking.
I'm sorry, I'm still a little confused about how people get into the building. I know that there are stair towers. Are they gonna be able, residents will be able to access those?
To my knowledge, yes, they'll be able to, so on the, there'll be 2 stair towers, one will be approximately in here, the other one will be approximately there. So if you're parking over in here, you could walk across, sidewalk goes around the building, go into a stair tower here. There's the lower level, garage parking access here. So as we spoke before, you could walk across the steps that we were just talking about adding here and go in the side of the upper level of parking garage, go over to the, elevator.
Okay.
And the same thing, you could go into the lower level here and come over the elevator and then go up to your apartment that way.
Is there pedestrian access in the parking garage to allow that to occur? Instead of just walking down the aisle?
No, essentially, you're
Walking
just,
down the aisle. from the
Okay.
plans
you're
I
walking
saw.
down, yes.
So I mean, realistically, your entry points are those 2 stair towers in the front entry. I mean, by code. Building code wouldn't let you have those, for egress points, you wouldn't be able to count them through the parking garage.
Okay.
So you'd have that front, southern one on Van Reed
And
side,
then the two in the back.
and those 2 towers in the
Okay.
back are really the only foot traffic entrances.
Okay, cause I'm trying to figure out how, if somebody's parking in this eastern lot, what's their quickest route to get to the building?
Right.
And it's gonna either have to be those stair towers in the back, or they're gonna have to come around and most likely go through the parking garage into those elevators, instead of coming all the way to the front.
Meaning coming in here.
Right.
Yes.
Especially, we had those steps and a crosswalk there, right at that entrance, that's.
Yeah, because I'm concerned if there isn't an allowing for pedestrian access on that driveway entrance going into the garage, that's a choke point that could be a problem with pedestrians being hit.
Well, how safe is it for pedestrians to walk into the garage?
Well, that's the point. Normally, if you have that occur, you usually provide a little bit of a wider driveway, so people, and a crosshatch so people can walk there, instead of using the drive aisles.
Think of the parking garage across from courthouse.
When you come in, there's that sidewalk down the right-hand side to take you from one side of the garage to the other,
And back to the elevator.
and back to the elevator bank and to the stair towers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what you would do if,
Well,
that's what you,
If people stay in it, it
Yes.
would,
yeah.
but
why stay against the building and walk in the middle of the driveway?
Oh, I'm not saying people won't do it, but.
But you're providing it.
Yeah.
That's
Right, but it's also fairly narrow, and people often, if they're walking to and fro abreast,
oblivious.
Oh, yeah,
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 and they're oblivious to what.
yeah.
right.
I mean, at least this one on the eastern side of the building, I think that should have pedestrian width to get in there. The one in the back, I'm not so much concerned about, but if we put if we put stairs in, that's the shortest route into those elevators.
Yeah, so we put steps here,
Yep,
put a painted crossing here,
yep,
extend the sidewalk to this sidewalk. Because we don't want them walking from here on.
That's correct.
So crossing here, painted crossing, sidewalk connection here, and what you're saying is to potentially look at some kind of painted area internally.
So are all these access points secure for both the people that will be living there, that will expect not to have visitors walking across this walkway, walking to the apartment building? How are they gonna, how are
They would have
people,
to,
how are all
come in
these
from the
different
front.
types of?
If you don't have the
people?
key access, you have to come in on the southern side, the Van Reed roadside driveway. That will be the only way for you to physically get in the occupiable, non-parking garage portion of the building.
Right.
The parking
I
garage
guess
portion,
what-
you can walk right in, but you can't get into the units or the hallways inside without having your key fob.
Is there a security desk?
yes.
Okay.
And are your elevators out of the parking garage gonna be key fob?
That is correct.
Okay, so you can't even get out of the parking garage and into
Right.
the
And you
building?
can't get into the parking garage.
No, you can get into the parking garage,
Well, when you get into the parking garage, can you not get into the elevator?
yeah,
Yes.
correct, not without a
You need
key,
fob,
right.
you need key fob yourself.
To get in the door where it's elevated.
There's no stair towers in the for the garage.
That would be key fob too.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I'm just
The
wondering.
stair towers
Assume
and
they
key
do.
fob.
they have a security guard.
So that sounds pretty secure, but in reality, the key fob thing gets lost in the mass of people coming and going in those situations. There's a lot of entry points here that would leave open security issues. I'm not sure how you solve them, but it seems like there are a lot of dark areas that would be accessible with a locker and having to keep the door open with a lock and, have to approach your lights. But I don't know.
And
how-
you have security, and security with cameras
cameras.
on all the entry points
Yeah.
and the garage, presume there be cameras in the garage as well?
On the whole site, yeah.
So are the cameras gonna be connected to the police department or?
They're on the security desk, they learn
You're gonna have
security.
security guards on site
That's correct. A
24/7.
lot of staff on site, yeah.
Would that be 24/7?
Didn't get that far in depth on that, but I know there would be staff, yes.
Just my 2 cents.
Okay, so are we, going back to the original comment about the dead ends, I mean, you guys can make the decision, that's your call, so I only made the
You're
recommendation.
gonna lose you lose 3 parking spaces if you took that dead end and hooked it from the.
I think it should be connected.
Well, you're gonna, in order to have a 24-foot wide driveway with a radius for your connecting curb, you're gonna end up losing probably 8 or
Well, I mean, honestly, you're giving them 10 feet to turn around in versus giving them a 20-foot wide opening to go over in. I don't even care if you make that one way. Honestly, just so there's a
One
link.
way in, one way out,
You could do one-way loop around the
Right.
whole thing.
and then you need a 12-foot.
Well, it would be, what,
16. right?
16.
Or 16 or 18 in your ordinance with 90-degree parking?
I don't know, I have to go back and look.
You can't do 12 with 90-degree parking, you won't get out of the spaces.
no, you probably still need 18.
You probably need 18 for the drive aisle if you.
How many extra spaces do you have? Or what's
Per the requirement of the ordinance, we have about 50 extra spaces, but again, like I said, that's,
50?
For your requirement, you have 3 extra, right? Because you want 1.5?
well, I want 1.5, so yeah.
That's
so-
315 and you got 318.
Right.
So if we lose those 3 to punch through there,
What if you made the middle section just one, and then is there enough room then that you feel comfortable to turn?
I think, I'd more look at like what Jim's saying, and that providing the link at the end, no matter what. If you just have one row of parking spaces in the middle, you're losing more spaces there than you would
Why
by,
do you need to lose 15 more?
yeah, you're gonna lose, what is that,
I don't wanna mention
14
that,
on
it
each
seems
side,
like
I think
everything
it's
is
there.
turned up.
I think it's, yeah. So, if you guys want those two connected there, I think the easiest way that's gonna lose the least amount of spaces is gonna be to make those one-way aisles and provide a one-way access across the end of the 2 parking bays there.
And there's not too much of a drop there?
No, because like right now, they're already touching, it's basically one continuous macadam parking lot there now. This essentially would just be, like I said, we'd be cutting off the end of of both ends and they sort of tie them together.
Make it one-way loop. Make it a one-way loop, you can make it counterclockwise or clockwise, but make it one way.
Well, usually you do that with angle parking, you don't usually do it with 90-degree parking.
Correct.
Because you're gonna get somebody, if you make this one way like this, someone coming down here is gonna back out and gonna come out the one way.
No doubt. We can't police idiots.
We could, but we try
I mean,
not
no
to.
matter what, no matter what you design, somebody can not follow the signs.
I mean, they could go to angle parking, right? We have
With
provision-
Angle parking is probably
You're gonna lose some more
space, you're gonna lose
spaces.
space
Right.
that way
Yeah,
too.
unfortunately, that's, angle parking always sounds good, but you
I
actually.
mean, I honestly think you'd lose,
Right.
right in here, you'd lose 3 to 4 spaces.
Right.
Because then you could take this area right here that you have, make use of that area, and I believe you can get at least, I mean, that's, those are 10, well, what,
Nice.
9 by 18s? That's 27 feet right there. So maybe you lose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Why is the drive aisle so wide on the north end?
Up here?
Yeah. Is,
I mean, there's always an option, you could provide some additional, maybe parallel parking here.
Yeah, we prefer to avoid that if at all possible, because parallel parking confuses people. It really does.
Well, it's better to have them park here than out here, so.
Well, that's for sure, for sure. I think the intent was actually that there's supposed to be, that's supposed to be brought down closer to the, there's supposed to be a gap in the pavement
Yeah.
between the.
I think actually that's one of our comments, I think that educating has to move in further to meet the
That's
buffer requirement of the conditional use
That's a
hearing
drafting
and
issue.
ordinance.
Yeah, that's a drafting issue, now it should be, there's actually supposed to be a little gap in between the wall and the edge of the parking lot. Primarily when we had met before, we said that the retaining wall could be within the buffer area, and apologies if I'm going off script here greatly.
So, no, that's okay, I'm just thinking that, now we bring this up, is if you don't wanna do that, and this has to come down, is this what you're saying?
Yeah, the edge of the blacktop, on the north end there is gonna come, pull away from the wall and
How
the
much?
screen fence there.
How much?
So if you look at the parking spaces on the east side or on the right side, you can see that that last space looks like it's 3 feet, it's basically 3 feet wider than it should be.
Well, how about this? I mean, this is 24 feet.
Yeah, I think it's about 30 feet the way I had it originally laid out in there.
Could you move this up to be more in line with this? That way you could take up possibly 3 more spaces. What you'd lose down here, you might be able to pick up at least a couple.
We can look into that to see if we can get any more
You good,
spaces.
Jim? This is like 30 feet right here. That maybe, see how you got this 24, but this is really wide?
Well, that's too tight, yeah, I mean, that side, to the right side of that driveway is too tight to the setback, to the buffer. That edge has to come back.
Well, I know, he said it's gonna be coming down here, like, it's only like 3 feet. So, maybe we could pick up another spot in here, like 3 spots.
Yeah. I mean, that's,
It's worth looking at, because if there's concerns about losing 5 to 6 spots here, maybe you could pick up a few back up in here, and get them back to the ratio that they want.
sure.
Appreciate the guidance, and we'll look into that.
Okay. All right, well, let's move on. Is that okay for, you guys okay with moving on? All right, next one is, there is a truck turning templates they provided for the fire truck runs. There isn't anything down in here. So I just made a comment about it that was missing, but it's really at the discretion of your fire chief or your fire marshal, if, whether they need to see that. But we made a general comment that your fire chief needs to review the whole plan anyway, so, so if they have some concerns about this area here, again, if they're gonna get in this area, they're gonna get in there however they need to. Whether there's actually a need there or not, I'm sure the building is sprinkled, about sprinklers. I have concerns about someone pulling up to here and then looking back over their shoulder and through this area with this curve. They're not gonna be traveling at a great rate of speed, and, Eric can tell you that, that's not gonna be a high travel speed. But I was wondering if we might wanna consider maybe, if it does become a problem, maybe you can make it a condition of approval that they look at some kind of internal traffic control here, maybe stop bar here, and, potentially up in here, make it a 3-way stop, but really, it doesn't, if there's grade changes here too, that could potentially also be an issue. That's really, I'm concerned about someone looking back over their shoulder and looking through their car. And there's a blind spot there to begin with, so if it becomes a problem, I think it's something that you definitely need to keep this area free of vegetation.
Are there any issues here that the fire and police folks should look at that we're not thinking about, or that you guys that know more about parking know about, that they should look at first to tell us, can't do that, so something that we thought we could do?
I'm waiting on those review comments back, we haven't gotten them yet. But, I mean, fire automatically takes a look at any land development plan that comes in.
Yeah, I just didn't wanna get to the part where we all say, yeah, that's the way to go, and somebody said you can't go that way.
We had actually already reached out to Troy, I think it is, and he reviewed the site plans, had no issues or concerns with the layout. Primarily, the remaining issues we have to deal with him is he needs to see where the standpipe's gonna be in the building and the external fire department connection. Cause that's, obviously he has to review that for to make sure that complies, and then proximity to that to where the closest fire hydrant's gonna be. But the layout, as you said, the geometry of the parking lot and the driveways, he had no issues or concerns there.
Yeah, good.
Okay. All right, so again, going back to this, something you may want to consider is maybe some conditions of approval if it ever becomes a problem. Certainly, as a, landowner, as someone who maintains the property, that should be keeping an eye on this, all the time for liability issues. Next thing is the dumpster location. I initially just didn't
We
like
have
the
that.
location of it being.
Greg,
Okay,
we have that going.
Oh, you can.
Is there anything for the PC? We don't have to go through every line of it. Anything we need PC, and it's a technical thing we can do with them.
All right.
But when we went the PC away, but like the things we've been, the layout, the parking,
Deliveries, yes, Amazon deliveries, how is that gonna be handled?
We have a package room.
Okay, but how are the trucks going to maneuver on the site?
So, the crosshatched area shown at the end of the parking lot in front of the building, that's intended to be the turnaround space for delivery trucks. It's, yeah, it should function to serve the needs that they have there. I know there was another comment regarding a loading space, but I don't know that loading spaces are required for residential development.
But I'm not touching it, it's just the batteries on the back.
Well, this is a multi-use residential building, so it's a little bit different, so.
I mean, we could reserve a parking space in front, so like we have, if you see, it says visitor on the left-hand side of right next to that turnaround, we could reserve a space there for,
they're gonna park behind your handicap spaces right in front of the entrance.
I mean, that's probably where
Right
they're gonna park
on.
anyways, right?
It doesn't matter what,
Park in the handicap
I
spaces.
can't,
it doesn't matter what you do for the FedEx and UPS guys, not right in front of the door, they just block the space.
well,
and
I'm
walk.
concerned about having multiple deliveries with the number of units that are gonna be in this building.
They probably have an Amazon truck there all day.
Yeah, but then you had the term
210
that you brought
apartments.
up, the concern at that intersection right there.
Yes. Could we, could you do that with some boarding there, Greg? And, cause it's wide too.
This here?
I mean, I know it's for the turning radius, but you have a wide opening there. You don't-
Well, I had made recommendations that we provide stop bars at some of the internal intersections anyway, so that needs to be better defined. All of these intersections need to be better defined with stop bars and stop signs. So, at a minimum, a stop signs. You don't necessarily need stop bars at every intersection, but it's always wise as an added, design. So again, the dumpster, you guys could discuss
So the
that.
dumpster's in the setback.
Right, so we had that. I made a comment about the drop-offs, and I guess the only comment that you guys could, it's only for informational purposes, is whether you have EV charging stations. Because most facilities are providing that now.
So we should be doing that, right?
Where do you guys stand on requirements for EV,
Electric vehicle? No.
There is none.
or charging stations or anything? You don't have anything yet?
No, we do not.
Don't we
Okay.
have to have that?
Nope,
No?
we do
No,
not.
I mean, have that in terms of common sense.
Nope.
That's what you're gonna
Okay, you make that speak.
That would be something if the building owner wanted to install that, they certainly could, but we don't have any ordinance that mandates them to have EV charging.
So is there a way, I'm not thinking outside the box, is there a way to pre-set the ability to install that if you wanted to, or is it easy to do anyway, even if you don't start out with it?
I would think, I
In the
mean,
parking garage itself?
Yeah, I'd say
I mean,
wherever.
it's easier to
If
add
you-
later
if
in the
somebody
parking garage than
decides
outside.
they wanna Do that,
Conduits,
Right.
pain, but you're not precluded.
But you're not gonna know who wants it.
no,
We
look
find
at,
everybody
look at all the
finding
places
numbers.
they've popped up in
Usually
the parking
we're
lot.
about me if I know. Hip hop video manager.
I certainly don't have an EV car, but it seems a lot. Our house.
Do you know where it is?
Yeah. So that's it for my traffic,
The door behind
unless
you.
you have anything
Alright.
else, I'll hang around till you.
So then, Greg had touched on the trash enclosure, and that was one of Michelle's zoning comments as well, that can't be located in the front yard, in the setback,
Well, it's not,
but it's in the
It's not-
buffer there as well,
it,
in that one.
that's not even my concern. My concern is, one, there's no screening proposed
Right.
for it, and two, it's as close as it can possibly get to these residential properties. I'm thinking of when the truck comes to empty it and it's banging at 5 o'clock in the morning. Is there any consideration for putting it somewhere else on the site? Just as far away preferably from those houses as possible.
Yeah, we looked at different options. We were hoping to avoid putting it at the dead end on those parking aisles, because then again, the truck would have to back up. If we do connect those now, that kind of eliminates that concern as far as the dead end there. And one of Greg or Jim's suggestions was in the parking garage underneath, which would obviously be easier for the tenants. So I think we're gonna look into that. There's concerns about the overhead clearance
The
and
height of the trucks.
So the, what is that, 100 square? What do they call that over here?
100
Or
North
Park? So they actually collect everything and they wheel it out in totes on trash day. 'Cause we've seen
What,
them
out
do
to
it.
the trash can.
No, they wheel the totes out onto the sidewalk on what would be the extension of Reading Avenue if it was still a public road. They actually wheel them out there every trash day and they pick them up and then they wheel them back in. They don't have like a giant dumpster, they're all the ones you can roll.
and then the
Like
truck
the
just,
2 yards.
the truck just parks like in the driveway, waiting for the, and then.
No, they wheel them out in the morning. Truck comes, picks them up.
There's like a bump in,
Oh, okay.
there's like a curb bump in right there that they can put them all in if they're not in the
Yeah,
access
the truck
road.
picks them all up and then, later in the day, they come wheel them all back inside. So like the biggest tote they can make, I forget what it is, 2 yard, yard and a half, something like that. It's like bigger than your recycling tote, but a person can push one around.
They just have a bunch in the garage.
Oh, when they wheel them out there, what is there, Michelle, 15 or 20 of them there on trash day, that they wheel out?
There's a lot.
There's a lot.
There's a decent amount.
Yeah, I know my daughter she lives in a
Because what you're gonna
relatively new
find is
apartment.
when you
They
go
actually
to
have a
figure out your
garbage
charge
chute
sheet,
Yeah. I
that
think
drops
it's-
straight down
they're
into
gonna
the
drop down inside the building, so you're gonna have to get it from there. So that's why they all use those wheelable ones.
But I mean, I think it sounds like
Little laundry.
there's general consideration that you wanna move the location of that dumpster elsewhere.
But if they had the dumpsters internal and did a bump out outside, they wouldn't necessarily need a trash enclosure, right?
Correct.
We wouldn't force them to have one
No, not
if
if
they
it's
had
inside.
it inside the
Yeah.
building. I think we would probably when you look at operations, cause I looked at that at the office apartment building we were gonna do, and getting it from the chute into a 6 yard or 10 or 12 yard dumpster was the issue. And all the trash companies recommended those big rolling totes. And when they're filled, just roll it out, slide another one in, they can pick them all up and dump them. So. I don't think you want to install trash bags.
What was the name of the place you said that they were doing
Wyoming Square,
100 North Park.
they do it on the side that faces
Between the
the Met and then that.
Yeah, that's what I
And the
thought.
sidewalk, the curb bumps out into the sidewalk there for a section, and they set them all in there.
You know when trash day?
That's
Oh, well,
private.
well, that's
so I have no
private, that's
idea.
not our standard trash.
Okay.
Then we talked briefly, just some encroachments into the buffer, some gaps in the buffer, we're gonna clean that up. There's some lighting issues with the conditional use plan provisions, zero cutoff at the property lines and some lighting of the intersections. That was, they were honestly the biggest things. There were some other, more minor engineering things, obviously, ENS, MPDS, all those approvals. We're still looking at, so this all flows to the Fourth and Oley pump station. We ordered new pumps for the Fourth and Oley pump station, anticipating this project, and they were supposed to be in February. And we wanted to monitor them for 60 days to just see the flow, how much they pumped and all that, because they can tell you theoretically whatever they pump, but we want them to see them in there and make sure. That's been delayed, so they have asked for sewer capacity and planning module. We are not in a position to act on that yet. I talked to Jim Babb this morning, because Rob sent me a email that reminded me to check on the update, and their pumps are scheduled to be in the end of May, beginning of June. So we're probably gonna have to run those for June and July, and then in August, be able to give them a formal answer on sewer. We should know after a couple weeks of them running,
Are you doing the
unofficially.
mailer or are you doing the full module?
We're doing the mailer.
Okay.
Jim, if I could just touch on some of those comments, the buffer, the screening buffer along Greenwich, since this, the remote parking is gonna be elevated quite a bit, we have a screen fence that's gonna block the headlights and provide a visual screen along there on the east side. So, do we need to have a full screen buffer at the base of the retaining wall in that section, or is it, are we just
You're saying
concerned?
the area to the east of?
So the area to the east of the driveway that runs north to south, yeah, that area there. We're not proposing to eliminate plantings in there, we just don't think that we need a full visual screen to block the view of the retaining wall.
I mean, I'm looking at the conditions in the conditional use hearing, which is very simple. A 20-foot minimum landscape buffer will be installed along Greenwood Street. There's nothing in that decision that said partially along Greenwood Street. So to me, from property line to property line along Greenwood Street, you need to put in that buffer.
Okay, so that means the full screening buffer, okay. And then, you had a comment again regarding the off-street loading areas? Is that, what we discussed as far as what's being provided in the front of the building seem acceptable, or is there additional off-street loading that you guys were concerned? There's a comment number 9 at the bottom of page 2.
Here,
That's
subdivision,
down
see?
there. Oh, yeah, just, you didn't designate any.
So if I just,
Obviously, you're not having tractor trailer deliveries, so you're having box truck deliveries, but we need to.
okay,
And then the other thing is, I don't know if you thought about it, but where your, when your tenants are moving in and out. I mean, obviously with 210 units, you're gonna have pretty, moving in and out's gonna be pretty much a daily occurrence. Where's that truck on the park, unload, where's the moving truck on the park,
Well, doesn't that have something to do with where the elevators are and how does that work?
generally?
We have the service elevator in the front.
yeah.
And is there gonna be a freight elevator versus a,
You said that's
Yeah.
located where?
It's located next to the two, guest elevator or people elevator.
Towards the Van Reed Road
Yeah.
lobby?
Yeah. The service elevator.
So while you're moving in and out, it's coming through the main lobby, that side.
Yeah.
Or depending on the side of the truck in the garage.
Moving truck, you ever see fit in your garage?
Yeah.
well, if you're gonna be moving in and out and your deliveries are coming in through the same front door, aren't you gonna be like jam-packed with stuff, people?
That's why Craig asked for where's the loading zone and I think that's what he was getting at, where's your regular Amazon, UPS, FedEx loading, unloading, and where's your moving, being that it's an apartment building, you're gonna have frequent in and outs. And I'm sure you hope everyone signs a 10-year lease, but that's not realistic.
Okay, impact studies, obviously we're gonna be, utilities we're looking at with water and sewer as far as sewage planning. Recreation, I think we're gonna do a fee in lieu of. Environmental, we're gonna cover with our land development and E&S. I wasn't sure if there were specific concerns that the planning commission and or Jim has regarding those impact studies. was, comment number 19 on page.
Nope, we're just saying that since you're over 50 units, they're all required, so it's just a matter of whether, where you know, they weren't submitted, so are you submitting them, asking for waivers, asking for partial waivers? What's the thought process? It sounds like you're submitting them all?
I mean, if I give you like a one-page summary that, for these, is that acceptable, or is there something specific that you're looking for the analysis on
It
these?
meets that section.
Okay,
I mean,
alright. I think that's just about it. The stormwater and then,
I don't think the planning commission wants to get into details of stormwater design.
no,
Do you?
I have a question about it though. Did I see pervious pavement?
yes,
I think I asked this before. Do we have an ordinance requirement for pavements?
We actually have a pervious pavement, agreement that has to be executed for any property that has pervious
Okay.
paving. And it has more frequent inspections and various other things than their standard stormwater agreement. I believe that was, Chris, like last summer that is around when the first one of those went out.
Sounds familiar.
I believe it was Mr. Unger's house on Lincoln or Logan, whichever street he lives on, was the first one. He was our guinea pig for the ordinance. But yeah, so that's in place for any
Okay.
anybody that has porous paving, like the Eco Block pavers, porous concrete, any type of porous impervious kind of oxymoron.
No,
sorry, go ahead.
I would say not on the agenda because I only received the request today, but there's a request for 2 waivers under section 03.1 to submit a preliminary plan. So granting the waiver would allow this to be considered a preliminary final plan submission. And then also 404.1, 403.1 related to plan scale. These are not on the agenda, so a motion would be necessary to amend the agenda to take action on the waiver request if you're so inclined to do so.
I'll make a motion to add to the agenda.
Yeah, so.
So somebody wanna make a motion to approve it?
No, that's what
Just go
that's
over
what-
it.
wait,
Seconded.
Yeah.
we just have, just amend the agenda right
We
now.
need to vote on it.
We have a second.
Yes,
All in favor of approving the agenda?
Aye.
So, wanna do it or not?
Public comment.
Public comment,
Public comment on the agenda change.
Carol, that's going.
No public
I
comment.
know, baby sleep station.
Discussion?
Should we take them separate? Or together?
We're gonna take them separately.
I'll make a motion to approve recommend approval of the waiver from the plain scale of 1 inch equals 50 feet.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? First one down. We've got the second one.
I didn't know if Jim or Michelle has any issue with.
The second one is, I hate that our ordinance even specifies that.
We just
They're
We just
asking,
voted on that.
they're asking for,
We went out
oh, you went out of order.
Back.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
We took the easy one first.
Yeah,
Yes.
trust me, when we revise this out, it'll say 1 acres, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 scale are all allowed.
Anything.
Preliminary plan, I mean, it's ultimately,
They still have to comply
I
with
mean-
everything in the ordinance.
ultimately, at the end of the day, if they did preliminary then final, the applicant could technically start earth moving at preliminary plan approval once he has ENS and NPDS. If they do preliminary / final, he can't start it till he has final plans recorded, all documents posted, escrow, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, doesn't really make a difference to me.
Well, he's asking for it, so he has to accept the consequences of the approval if it's granted.
Right. So as far as our review and everything, they still have to meet all the preliminary, they still have to meet all the final requirements. They just have to get it all together before they get any type of action from ultimately council.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, we have a second.
Second.
Okay, we have discussion.
Do we lose anything doing preliminary final from our standpoint with all the stuff that is outstanding, or is that it's also
Extra meetings.
That's what you saved,
Basically saves 2 sets of applications and potentially
Yes.
a ton of trees.
additional meetings.
And we have
So, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Rick, do you have anything that we haven't heard yet that you might have been talking about over there? You wanna tell
No,
us?
I mean, all of the great things, I was at the meeting for, when the decisions came out, the
Yeah.
residents that were there were all very happy with everything that was coming through, so I've heard only good feedback so far from the residents and the
So we're on
process.
the right track.
Absolutely, that's my understanding,
Good.
whether or not that's what they think, I'll hear from them, I'll hear from them
You're
later.
the community, you're the community.
Here.
So I think you make a motion to table this plan, correct?
Yeah, 'cause they're gonna need to resubmit.
But you don't, I don't know that you even need to do
You
that,
don't-
cause there's nothing on the agenda for action to be taken on it, cause I
Okay.
knew it was way too soon for that.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, we have at least,
Yeah,
at least till the June meeting, if not July, we're just checking with the.
This is the
90
first
days.
submission.
Yeah, this is the
Okay.
first official submission of the
Okay.
plan. But actually, their MPC clock starts today.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
90 days from today is
Yeah,
and there's a bunch of stuff they have to do.
there is. I don't know that we'll be back in next week, so to be on the agenda for, yeah.
Because with them going directly to, with the waiver, you know, assuming council grants that waiver, there's a lot of things they're gonna need before we can consider action now that it's a final plan. That we could give conditional a lot earlier as a preliminary.
Is there anything you haven't gotten guidance on that you need guidance on?
The only thing was, should we plan on attending the council meeting for the waivers, or?
Unless you wanna sit through an hour plus
I
to,
don't think so.
Let's
What's
figure
the
that
agenda
out.
item, so you can speak at the beginning?
I can,
Public comment,
you
yeah.
can,
you can speak during public
You can speak
comment,
at
but
the beginning if you wanna speak.
that's effectively one of
But
the
you
first
won't
meetings
normally-
on the
you-
agenda, so you'd be here until about 7:50, 8 PM.
Well, these are innocuous.
Yeah, these-
Yeah,
yeah.
don't
I understand.
think there's
If you're asking for a sidewalk waiver, then you better come be prepared for an hour-long discussion. But scale and preliminary final, I don't think there's gonna be an issue on Tuesday.
So when you revise the ordinance, there's gonna be a provision for a preliminary final, right?
That's the hope.
Well, I think I think it should be an option, but I think there's some plans that require
I agree.
a two-step process.
It was really set up for subdivisions more than anything.
You're right.
Right.
So,
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
thank you, everyone. I appreciate all you taking the time to give us your feedback today.
thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Old business?
Oh, the zoning ordinance amendment.
Who are they?
You got all excited there, Ron.
Is they doing the design?
Oh,
the building. No, no,
the zoning ordinance.
Parks and Traffic Solutions is doing the design. They're doing the actual
If
story
you
order.
recall,
Okay.
Oh,
a few months ago, planning commission reviewed
and the face.
recommended action by council on an amendment to the zoning ordinance regarding the, what's commonly known as, Airbnb type uses, or what we call in the zoning ordinance, short-term residential rental units. The version that went to council and was acted upon by council made that use a special exception use in every residential district, and only in the neighborhood commercial district was it a use by right. Council got pushback from the Realtors Association about the terms of that ordinance, and there was discussion with the Realtors Association that resulted in the ordinance that is now before you. So I would say the main concern was that they didn't want to be required to go through a zoning hearing board process for every short-term residential rental unit. So what was agreed to was to consider an amendment to the zoning ordinance that would make the short-term residential rental unit a use by right in all the residential districts, just as it was already provided for in the original ordinance for the neighborhood commercial district. But it's still subject to substantial conditions, and those conditions will be administered by the zoning officer rather than by the zoning hearing board, and will save the property owner a lot of money and time and delay in the process. So that's the number one change. But in addition, because of that discussion and dialogue that occurred with the Realtors Association, it came to our attention that we have some exclusions from the definition of dwelling in the existing ordinance that are not defined terms, and therefore there is, I think, some risk that there could be a misunderstanding in the application of the ordinance. So those exclusions are bed and breakfast and boarding, rooming, and lodging houses, and also certain institutional uses that were already excluded from the definition of dwelling, but were not specifically provided for in the ordinance and were not defined. So this amendment will add to the ordinance a definition for bed and breakfast establishment, also a definition for boarding, rooming, and lodging in house, and also a definition for institutional residence. Institutional residences are already provided for pursuant to this definition as family daycare home, group home for the handicapped, or treatment center. Those are all specifically defined uses that are provided for the ordinance, but for purposes of the definition of dwelling, we are grouping them together as institutional residence. Okay, so in addition to providing these definitions, we're also providing in the use regulations in each of the residential zoning districts that bed and breakfast establishments and boarding, rooming, and lodging houses will be allowed by special exception. So they will have to go through the zoning hearing board process. So again, I think all of these changes that I've just summarized will help us to better clarify, define, and administer the zoning ordinance for a variety of different residential type uses that we can anticipate are potential application subjects in the borough. In addition to all those residential related things, there was, in connection with the apartment project and the conditional use hearing that occurred, it became a subject of discussion that we have a specific amount in the zoning ordinance for the recreation impact fee that's to be paid by projects in the Ramui overlay district. That's your, what does that stand for?
Redevelopment Area Mixed Use Incentive Overlay District. Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, okay, so in the Ramui overlay district, the ordinance provides a specific $500 per unit rec fee for any project that comes under the terms of that regulation. The Borough Council has decided that they want to increase the rec impact fee generally for all projects in the borough. And what is the new amount? Is it? 1,200. Okay. So there's a resolution that was adopted that covers all rec impact fees for other projects other than Ramui overlay district projects. In order to change that regulation, we need to include it as an amendment to the zoning ordinance, and that amendment as provided in this draft that's in front of you says that from now on, the Ramui residential or recreation impact fees will be set by resolution under the saldo, will not be specifically set forth in the zoning ordinance. And then finally, we added some clarification, and this again was part of the discussion with the Realtors Association, to the off-street parking requirement for short-term residential rental units, where the original ordinance required 1 space per bedroom. The comment we got back was, in many cases, these will be conversions, and the single-family dwelling that's being converted to a short-term residential rental unit may not be able to comply with the 1 space per bedroom, but there are already, residential uses existing in the community. So the change that is proposed in the draft ordinance would continue to require one space per bedroom for a new construction that is intended from day one to be a short-term residential rental unit. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but if it happens, they have to provide one space per bedroom. In other cases, if there is existing, if there's space on the lot to add parking, to bring it up to that standard, they're required to add spaces. But if they don't have space that would otherwise comply with the zoning ordinance, they don't need to add additional off-street parking when they convert an existing single-family dwelling to a short-term residential rental unit. We also have added some specific regulations when a special exception application is received for a bed and breakfast establishment or for a boarding, rooming, and lodging house. There are objective standards that have been added to the ordinance to define, what standards have to be met in order for the zoning hearing board to approve those applications. That's everything that's in this ordinance. Are there any questions?
I don't think you said that we suspended enforcement.
I didn't say that, but that is true. The Borough Council, when it enacted the original version of this ordinance, suspended the enforcement of the ordinance for 90 days to allow this amendment to be considered and reviewed. So that was part of the process that the council acted on when it enacted the original version of the ordinance. Again, any questions or comments? If there are none, you could consider a motion to recommend this to council, or if you don't want to do that, you can make a different motion.
Make that recommendation. Are we making a motion to accept this entire amendment as
Yes.
written without
Yes.
going into all the rules and the bodies?
God, yes.
I don't think we need.
Yes, that's what we're doing. Yeah, that's what we're doing.
So tomorrow,
Life's
we're
too
gonna
short,
tell
Ron.
so we tell everybody tomorrow, we just said yes to all this, you're gonna have to interpret the rules.
No problem.
It sounded like a compromise with the Realtors
Yeah.
Association,
It
so,
was.
and it's,
And
makes
adding
sense.
some definitions we didn't have that we really should.
So I think it cleaned it up pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounded simple in the beginning, they're progressively more complicated, but that's all right, we'll figure it out. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve this ordinance as.
Are there any other groups or similar associations that would have potential input that we haven't considered, similar to what happened with the Realtors Association?
Well, my only concern is, when we originally prepared this ordinance, we were looking to protect neighbors rather than operators of short-term rentals. And the special exception procedure that was originally required was the process by which neighbors would be notified and would have an opportunity to express concerns. By dealing with the Realtors Association comments the way that we are proposing to do, we are reducing the opportunity for neighbors to have direct input in the process. And you recall with the apartment project, we did take into consideration the comments of the neighbors with that project. Now, I don't think this type of use is going to have the same impact that the enormous apartment building is going to have. I also think that our objective standards that have to be met and administered by the zoning officer will substantially manage the impacts, but I still, have to say, are there other interest groups? Well, every neighbor to one of these uses is a potential, has an interest in.
Does it have-
I'm not sure how that'll work out.
Does when they apply for an application, is there a posting on the property like you do for zoning?
No, because there's no public notice requirement.
Okay, alright.
So we are depending on one zoning officer to really know their P's and Q's, we're doing this to keep the same level of enforcement that a board might have. That's what we're hoping.
Yeah, again, I'm confident that we will be able to enforce the standards that are in the ordinance.
And we're also going from the lack of protections that we have today for neighbors to giving those individuals at least some recourse and saying what's allowable.
Yeah, I mean, time will tell whether we've struck the right balance or not. But, you know, my experience with zoning hearings is you often get exaggerated expectations of disaster from neighbors and,
Accurate.
so I,
That is accurate.
you know, I'm not sure, and again, as I said, we'll have to see how it looks.
If we turn into the vacation capital of the world, we can always improve our protections.
I guess back to Rick's original question, were we contacted by the Realtors Association after the ordinance was posted?
After it was advertised.
Advertised.
Well, after it was advertised, but before it was enacted.
So I think they've taken the initiative. Well, I don't feel the need to reach out anywhere else. They've taken the initiative.
And it was publicly advertised.
Right.
They were here in force, they were
Quickly.
quickly, vocally, so.
Yes. But they were constructive.
Yeah, I don't disagree with what they're asking. I mean, if it turns out to be a mess, then we can clean it up. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions? All in favor of the ordinance as mentioned?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Anything else hiding in the back of this paper?
Just old business and new
Old
business, neither of which I have any of.
Okay, we're up to the adjourn level. Motion to adjourn? So moved. Okay. Hurry up, get them all.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Just enough time.
We started 45 minutes ago.
Oh, no,
We started at 14.
on Mondays, I
What's
guess
that?
you're not gonna be our neighbor.
I'm not? We don't know.
4:15 Mondays, 4:15 Tuesdays, 4:15 Wednesdays, 5:30 Thursdays, 8
It's a
o'clock.
backhoe. I'm not buying any building, you just don't buy that.
We got 5 more.
I don't wanna own two buildings.
3, 4,
We don't have
5.
any.
Come on. All right, you guys have a good one.
You
too.
All right, see ya.
Thank you, guys.
See ya. See ya.
Here.
See ya. Greg wanted to get out and said you could just explain the review letter.
What's that?
Greg was trying to get out and said you could just explain the review letter.
Touching her, not dealing with his BS. Oh, one thing on that plan, I noticed, I want to bring it up. That the radio on the driveway. See you guys. I don't know if that matters. I mean, I know what PennDOT.
Oh, you mean the returns in the front?
Yeah,
Do anything with it here.
yeah, I know it's in the right of way, so I didn't know.
It was even PennDOT, you just send them that thing where, okay, if they sue you, we'll take.
Yeah, well, it's not that easy anymore, you gotta go, well, you gotta get like the
It's not just
permission
indemnification
first.
agreement?
You can't jump right to indemnification.
Oh, really?
No, it's like, try your best, and then maybe we'll consider indemnification.
Oh my God.
Worst one I was, I was dealing with, Ridley Creek State Park, and I had turn lanes on the park. So I'm like trying to get something out, and like, we're not approving anything, so I'm like, hey, PennDOT,
They were very lucky.
am I supposed to indemnify the state against action from itself?
And they're
What am I doing here? He's like, oh, we shouldn't have made that comment, sorry about that. Alright.
Correct, correct, and there are deer that
I want to pay the ass, right? So I said, what about this? Yeah, this payment.
So I'm wondering if it was, especially with that truck.
2 seconds.
I don't know who that guy is. He must have been the guy who opened it.
Until we get a new computer.
Truck, not,
Yeah.
See you tomorrow.
So somebody has actually cracked our system.
It's not-
The computer system, get rid of this thing. I'm trying to read.
one of the employees.
I feel like a
And then
paper.
another
I-
Oh,
employee.
that was
I
really
have the same feeling.
Yeah, it was personal, yeah,
All right. so
and then a
I'm
car,
crazy.
but the first two were bad side.
get rid of it either.
And you just can't.
All right, I'll see
Yeah,
you.
I know, I've seen that driving fast back there. I need to touch base with you, but.
I have a list of things, and you
Yes.
probably have a list of things.
Yes.
I want to give you one quick thing. We researched about the lieutenant appointment procedure. We have confirmed that we can simplify the civil service process to only have the oral exam and not a written exam.
so Michelle Mayfield's gonna draft that. Still have to go through civil service, you know, it's
Did we solve that?
It's still an examination,
still an examination, that's right.
which is, I think, was all the
That's the
language
key
said.
thing,
Yes.
is that it must be an examination, whether it can be an oral examination.
Yes, that's great.
I'm having a tooth pulled tomorrow afternoon, so
I thought that's what this meeting
Good
was.
luck.
now, this is the next one.
I told Greg he was talking too long at one point, and he never, I was like, you're talking too long, don't talk about stuff that's
Depending
not
how
important.
I feel, once it.
Don't talk about stuff you gotta talk about later, you got my letter too.
So, I feel like, but, maybe after finance on Thursday or Friday, other than stocking fishes in the creek.
We need to
Days
develop
for you.
we need to
Okay, we gotta
bifurcate.
let's tentatively.
What?
One of those,
A separate
the pointers,
I will give
the laser pointers, we need to have one that goes like this.
It don't work, it doesn't show up on that TV, because of the
Oh,
glass
so
filters it
won't-
out.
It won't show up even if you
Good
point
luck.
it.
No, I pointed over there.
like pulling teeth?
That screen doesn't let it show up, it just
I'm
deflects it
getting
like
knocked out.
ultraviolet or
I'll
something.
never have my sister
You
when
turn that off, the top button.
pulled